Hello everyone, it's the 1st August, 40 minutes after midnight German time, and today I will discuss, in my second video on this YouTube channel, I will discuss the results from the Great Recall vote, which was voted on July 26th. So maybe you have watched my first video, but this is a brief resumption of Taiwan's politics. Taiwan is a de facto country since 1949, which is an island off the coast of China, Southeast Asia, and there are two major parties, which is the KMT or Chinese Nationalist Party on the right, and the Democratic Progressive Party on the left. And the KMT was from a one-party rule, from a one-party dictatorship originally, but the KMT is like the nationalist right-wing conservative party, while the Democratic Progressive Party is more leftist, and also the KMT is pro-one China, while the KMT sees Taiwanese people as Chinese, wants to reclaim China in a way. So once Taiwan used to represent whole of China as the Republic of China, the KMT wants to pursue a one China policy, which means that in recent years it has been more China friendly, so more friendly towards the People's Republic of China, which is the Communist Party-led China in the mainland, whereas the DPP, the Democratic Progressive Party, is in favor of independence, of de facto independence, if not of proclaiming independence. They mostly don't want to proclaim independence so as not to irritate the People's Republic of China, but they want de facto independence. They see Taiwanese people as Taiwanese, not as Chinese anymore. And there's the TPP, that recent Taiwan's People's Party, which now is forming a majority. So in Taiwan's parliament, TPP, this new third party, is forming a majority with the KMT, whereas, interestingly, the Democratic Progressive Party has a government. So the parliament, which is the legislative yuan, has a KMT and a TPP majority, whereas the executive yuan, the government, is led by the Democratic Progressive Party. So there is a political deadlock where the opposition is in charge of the legislation and is making the laws, whereas the government, the president, Lai Ching-te, just can sign them. The president is from the Democratic Progressive Party. And there were a lot of, so these elections were in 2024, the situation is for now 1 year and a half. And there were, the Democratic Progressive Party and other people, civic society, criticized the KMT and the TPP also, the TPP also criticized these legislators because of a policy which was too friendly to China. Among other things, they have passed unprecedented budget cuts. Among these, 70% freeze of 70% of the operating expenses of Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense, of course thereby impeding Taiwan's capacity of self-defense. They have cut also the subsidies to Taipower, a national enterprise, and many other policies and behaviors which have been seen as too China-friendly, even kind of benefiting a potential invasion or welcoming a potential invasion, like the case of the cuts of Taiwan's defense budget. And on the other hand, they have handed out a universal out cash of 10,000 Taiwan dollars. So there is this policy of cutting budget drastically, and then in this case also even giving cash out freely to every citizen, and there have been other critiques concerning corruption. Anyways, all these policies which have been seen as too China-friendly, too friendly to the People's Republic of China, have sparked protest among civic society, among NGOs, which have led a great recall movement. Great recall because in the Taiwan system, unlike Germany, Italy, for example, it is possible to recall national deputies. So it is possible to have a vote in different constituencies, in different kind of districts, to vote again that do we still want to have this parliamentary, does he or she still represent us. And so there was a major vote on July 26th. There was a major vote where 24 KMT deputies have been there have been votes where people were asked, should we vote them, do we want them again, or should we recall them, should we dismiss them as politicians, as deputies of the legislative yuan. And that's what I'm talking about today, about the results. So to be more precise, in total there are 31 members of Taiwan's parliament, all from the KMT, the Kuomintang, this nationalist party which is more pro-China right now, or one China policy. 31 members of Taiwan's parliament from the KMT facing recall, all from this party, and 24 of these have been already voted upon. There will be 7 more on August 23rd. There will be a second round of votes, of elections. And additionally, there was one mayor, now independent, ex-TPP, the third party, whose recall also got voted on July 26th. So if it was yes, this mayor would have been dismissed from office, and in fact no one. And also there was a local councillor, so these are different roles, not national legislators, but this was a local councillor of the Democratic Progressive Party who also faced a recall vote in response to these other recall votes, but already on July 13th. And all these recall votes failed. That's very interesting, and this is what I will be talking about today. So this protest movement was started by NGOs, and later the Democratic Progressive Party mobilized in favor of this movement, in favor of recalling these in total 31 KMT deputies, in the hope to solve this political deadlock and regain the majority in the parliament, in the legislative yuan. And it would have needed, the Democratic Progressive Party would have needed that 12 of these 31 votes would have been successful, so that 12 KMT deputies would have been recalled, would have been asked to leave office, and additionally then there would be by-elections, so these legislative yuan constituencies, so these districts would vote again for each district, each constituency, one deputy, and the Democratic Progressive Party would have needed 6 additional seats in the legislative yuan to regain the majority which it had lost in the past elections, while it had retained it since 2016, and it failed. All of these recall votes, of course also connected with a certain cost for the citizens, all of these recall votes failed, so no deputy whatsoever, no national deputy, no mayor, no local councillor was recalled so far. There will be this second vote on, or this last vote on August 23rd, but it will be only 7 more deputies, so the Democratic Progressive Party lost right now all hope of changing the power, changing the balance of power, of regaining the majority in the parliament. So this situation of this deadlock, of this opposition majority of this minority government will last until the end of Lai Ching-de's government, or his presidency, his first presidency. Okay, so this is the result in brief. So it failed. All of these recall votes so far failed. Yeah, and now we will talk about why, and then I will again talk a bit about the consequences. So one thing is that actually the polls predicted that the support for this great recall, so support means yes, we want to recall them, we want to dismiss them from office, was stagnating below 40%, while the opposition to it hovered between 54 to 59%, the majority. So to recall a member of the Legislative Yuan, so these are people sent directly from the constituencies, from these districts. So every district has one representative, and they needed a quorum, a certain amount of people signing this request for recall, and afterwards they needed, it was required that at least 50% of people, of citizens within this constituency, within this district, would go to the vote, and that the majority of those, so at least 1/4 of all voters within this constituency, at least 25% plus 1, would vote in favor of the recall. And this never happened in all these recalls. It was wasted time, effort and money. And unfortunately also for my then neighbor, when I was in Taiwan, my neighbor was also in favor of this campaign, and he will be very disappointed by the result. So the polls predicted it. But now why did voters vote the way they voted? Well, it seems that they rejected what they saw as a partisan overreach. So it needs to be said that, of course, the Democratic Progressive Party and also some NGOs heavily criticized the KMT for destroying Taiwan's democracy, for handing Taiwan's democracy over to China, to Chinese influence, mainland China, while also the KMT, of course, fired back and said the Democratic Progressive Party is now overreaching, is now trying to build a one-party party dictatorship. And this was curiously backed also by Chinese propaganda, by mainland Chinese propaganda. So yeah, both sides claim to be in favor of democracy or defending democracy from a dictatorial opponent. And in any case, we can assume that most voters rejected what they saw as an overreach, as trying too much by the Democratic Progressive Party, trying to regain, in fact, the majority in the Legislative Yuan. And also President Lai Ching-de used some terms. He used the term impurities to describe opposition views. This was heavily criticized by the public. Then it has been said that the Democratic Progressive Party and also civic groups overplayed this rhetoric of we need to resist China to protect Taiwan. And apparently, curiously enough, this rhetoric, analysts say that this rhetoric has begun to wear thin amongst moderate voters. Then many voters opposed these mass recalls, also first that large recalls in the history of Taiwan, so soon after general election. The general election was in January 2024. So it was 1.5 years after the general election. They wanted to change the configuration of the parliament, and this failed, and every deputy who has passed a recall vote can't be recalled again in the next, now I think 2.5 years, so until the end of his or her term. And then again, of course, all of these recalls have been in constituencies, in districts where there was a KMT majority, so which were KMT strongholds, where the pan-blue coalition, the KMT coalition, was strong. So of course it was difficult and it failed in every case. And not only did it fail, the one politician, the one deputy who was the closest to being recalled was Ye Yuanzhi in East Banqiao in New Taipei city. 49% of the voters of this constituency supported the recall, while 51% were against recalling him, so he was not recalled. And he was the closest of his party, the closest of all to be recalled, and the threshold was not reached. So, for both reasons, because a minority supported the recall of 49%, and because the threshold of how many people should go to the vote, which is at least 50% of all citizens, or of all, eligible voters of the district. Because of these two reasons, he was not recalled. On contrast, the only Democratic Progressive Party member who faced a recall vote, which was the member of the Nantou County Council, so not a national deputy. This was Chen Yuling. There, 67% of the voters were pro-recall and 33% were against the recall. Why was she not recalled? Because the threshold of the participation was not reached. So that's why she was not recalled, because not enough people went to vote. Which, of course, signals some growing opposition maybe to the Democratic Progressive Party, who has now really been weakened or been given less legitimacy by the public by the exit of this vote. Some observers said that at first it was civic society groups, it was NGOs creating this campaign of the Great Recall campaign, but then Democratic Progressive Party members, including the President of Taiwan, of the Republic of China, all mobilized in favor of this recall vote. So this failure, this defeat, became also a real Democratic Progressive Party defeat, while the KMT, on the other hand, has been strengthened, right? The deadlock will continue. I already say this. The deadlock will continue. There will be still a government by the Democratic Progressive Party and a majority in the parliament by other two parties. There is public feeling, public display of being tired of an anti-China rhetoric, surprisingly enough. And also this, of course, is a very ambiguous signal to China, to the People's Republic of China. At the very least, it shows that anti-China rhetoric has been maybe less and less important, or has been not as important as the Democratic Progressive Party and the campaigners thought. So that anti-China rhetoric is wearing thin in Taiwan, among Taiwan's majority. This rhetoric is not that important anymore. And yes, and we have to say there were in this year, 2025, both unprecedented budget cuts by the KMT TPP majority, and also an unprecedented recall vote. There has never been such a large recall campaign. So yes, in brief, it failed. The recall campaign failed so far. Now there will still be 7 deputies of the KMT facing a recall vote, but the big goal of changing the majority failed also. The big goal for the Democratic Progressive Party failed. The big goal of recalling so many deputies failed. Instead, there were most of them were legitimized in office. Some reached in some constituencies. There were more than 50% of eligible voters who went to vote, and they still chose, with sometimes 60%, to keep the deputy. So yes, sending off an ambiguous sign to China, and a sign that also, a sign that anti-Chinese sentiment seems to be decreasing, or seems to be not that important anymore in Taiwan. We hope of course that this won't encourage China to invade Taiwan, but one must say that it is a strong signal of, or it could be interpreted as a signal of we don't care too much. Or let's say right now, this sentiment is not that important and not that decisive in our internal policy. They were also cutting the defense budget, so of course this should be of concern to people. Also, it was also of concern to some militaries. So that's it. These are the results. All the recall votes have failed. I myself decided that I want to consider more the polls before talking about a vote, because also I feel like my position was probably biased by the people I've talked to, by the articles I've been reading, by the Taipei Times, which was more pro-recall. Yeah, so I also take some blame and being a bit biased maybe by my neighbor and other friends, and and thinking that maybe this recall was important. Taiwan's majority decided that they don't want to recall their deputies, and they want them to finish their term. Yes. Some corrections from the previous video. What I didn't bring across, or what I forgot to mention, is that Taiwan was a colony of Japan from 1895 to 1945. So the geographical Taiwan was a Japanese colony for a long time. People were learning Japanese, were talking Japanese. Chinese culture was of course discouraged and during this time. And so while there was a revolution in mainland China in 1911, which changed into the Republic of China, which was then transferred to Taiwan, because the Republic of China, which was governed by the KMT party, lost the civil war against the Communist Party, so they fled to Taiwan. But Taiwan was not, so Taiwan was Japanese colony, then briefly Republic of China, where all of mainland China and Taiwan was united, and then only Taiwan was anymore part of the Republic of China, because all the rest became the People's Republic of China. So that's a brief correction in my overview of the history of Taiwan. Yeah, and also the proper term for these districts is Legislative Yuan constituencies, which is districts basically. But that's a proper term. As to me, I will just briefly say that I arrived in Munich. This is my room, the room where I grew up, and which belongs to my family for the past 18 years. We counted. I sometimes lived here, sometimes lived elsewhere. Now for 1 year in Taiwan. I just returned 1 week ago after 1 year in Taiwan, and I'm very happy to be reunited with my family. And of course, as you can see, I'm still connected to what is happening in Taiwan by creating these videos, mostly for Western audience, of course, because this vote has been underreported by Western media. And that's by myself for today. David discusses of politics, philosophy, and literature. See you in the next video.